In this video, I am going to explain 5 graphic design tips that will make sure you are designing like a professional graphic designer. And the way I'm going to show this is by giving an example of a really bad design that does not apply these points, and then show you how to make them look good with professional looking designs. So here is our flyer that is not very good. First off, it is out of style. If you look at this, it looks very 90s and it's not up with current design trends. Next, it has way too much information on it. It looks like it's all over the place in terms of where should you look. There is so much data and it doesn't need to be like this. It needs to be focused to get the best message across in the best way possible. Also, the images, they do not look professional. They look like they could have been taken with an iPhone and they're kind of odd and not really appetizing. You want to make sure if you're doing something, especially for a food, it needs to be appetizing looking. So have professional images that are well displayed. Next is the color palette. It is using this green and red, which has a lot of Christmas connotations. And unless it's not a Christmas flyer, so unless you're doing something that's meant for a holiday, beware of holiday colors that will, like such as if you're doing orange and black and it's not necessarily Halloween. Make sure it doesn't convey that and mislead people in the color palette. And then finally, it doesn't apply the layout principles or the fundamentals. There's especially white space, alignment, and hierarchy are really not well done here. So that's a big point that is going to be adjusted, and I'm going to be fixing it right now. So I'm importing the bad design into InDesign. That's where I'm going to be creating the new one. And I want to have that as a reference so I can make sure that I still have the same message essentially there. And we know that I'm going to get rid of that color palette based on what I went over. So I'm first establishing what is the color palette. I've already done my sketch, by the way. It's really important that you sketch out the layout before you jump into the computer. So I've already done my sketch. I have a concept of how I want things to go. So I know also the color palette I want to use is along the lines of analogous. I want it to be red and kind of this cream. So that would be a light value of yellow, and then I want it to be brown, which is essentially a dark shade of orange or red. Now, if you want to learn more about color palettes and how to use color harmonies correctly, check out this video right here, which is going to give you a great explanation with examples. I am working in the color scheme or the color mode of CMYK because this is a flyer, so it's intended to get printed. I like to start with the background colors so I can work from that bigger point and work into the more specifics of the layout. So first I'm just putting the colors around, and I like to work on different layers in InDesign. That makes it a lot easier to navigate. For repetition's sake, I'm gonna have that brown on the top as well as the bottom. And then I'm also going to have the red on the bottom, and I'm gonna put it in the top middle. So these are repeated elements which help with that fundamental, which is repetition. If you want to learn more about the fundamentals of design, you can check out this video right here. I'm also going to link to it in the description of this video. I'm going to be using the tool Anchor Points to make a design that's more of a triangular shape at the bottom. I'm going to put a stroke around that, make sure it's white so you can see it. Now I know I want to have 3 images at the bottom. See how they have 3 images on the side of their flyer, and I want to have 3 images displayed near the bottom so you can get a sense, and we're thinking with the target audience of the flyer. So if someone wants to hire them for catering, they can get a sense of 3 different styles or 3 different types of foods that this company, that's catering company, can provide. And I'm having that same stroke, the same 6-point stroke that I have at the top, just to keep things unified. The repetition really helps with that. And for the middle, I want to have this really nice looking kind of gourmet looking dish, which is the steak and salad. And that'll be the centerpiece. Interesting enough, it has some brown and red, so it matches the color palette. Now I'm importing the images in. Now you can see they are high quality stock images. These are not shot on an iPhone. They're as if this catering company had the professional photographers that are usually at events. It's like they went and they got those photos and they paid for the photos so they could use them in their promotional materials as well. So now we have these 3 photos anchoring the bottom. They look nice. The dish looks very premium. Now we're gonna go into our type. I like to keep this on a different layer because it helps if I need to lock the bottom layer so that things don't move around, I can do that. I'm naming this one for the sake of this design. This is not real, obviously, but this is Caspian Catering Services. Caspian is a character from one of my favorite book series, Chronicles of Narnia, and I used to want to name my dog that when I was little, but here we're gonna name my catering service Caspian. I'm going in and making it so that there's some contrast in the type. So that one is going to, instead of being a bold like I have the other one, this one is going to be smaller and it's going to be regular. So that gives, the real importance is that catering, but it still is obviously important to have the name and the services there as well. But that's going to be this nice contrast instead of them all being in that extra bold. When you're doing type work and especially when you want to have a bigger one, you don't want to have everything at the same size of the type. It's just, it makes it less interesting of a design. Whereas if you have something that's more bold, the other typefaces and the fonts around it are going to help to be contrasted and it'll add more interest to the design. There are those times when things, even though I spaced it the same amount of space as is between services and catering, where it just doesn't look right. So I made it so that I moved that line down further, which just helps with the overall spacing. It's important when you're designing, you don't just zoom in and work at a very zoomed in level. You gotta go back and zoom out, look at the overall composition, make sure everything is workable. I wanna add a nice drop shadow here. Not harsh, I'm gonna be adjusting that. That harsh one is gonna be similar to the catering services one of the bad logo, the bad flyer, the 90s look. In order to do drop shadows without the 90s look, you gotta make sure it's a softer one and you can adjust that in the effects, making the size a little bit bigger so it's not harsh line. You see how in the bad flyer, they have the call to action at the top and then all of this information. They say, let us cater your next event, and then they have all this information. Well, I am going to be putting the let us cater your next event as that call to action. So after they find out, okay, they're a catering service, this is the kind of events they do, this is the type of food they can do. Now it's the call to action. It's telling the people who are reading the flyer, take this next step. And what we want them to do as a designer, we want whoever the client is, we want their customer, their client to take action and work with our client, because that's the purpose of any flyer, anything that is designed. It has a purpose, not just to look nice. You want people to take action as a result. So we want these people's clients, or the potential people that see the flyer, to have this company cater their event. The last thing to put the final touch on this is I want to add some additional perks or points that are really enticing to clients of this catering service. And I want to talk about how it's fast service and how the food is fresh. So I'm going to add a second typeface to this design, and I really think it's important, and this is a design principle, you don't want to use more than 2 typefaces. So I'm adding this second one, which is this script that has a nice contrast. It has a nice compatibility with the sans serif we're using. And this is going to on the left side, and then I'm going to have one to balance it on the right. And that's something you always have to think with when you are creating a design. If you put something somewhere, what is going to balance it somewhere else so that things are not off balance? And that's like where we have the red on the top, we have the red on the bottom, we have the brown on the top, the brown on the bottom. So I'm going to be putting a little communication on the left and one on the right. So there's the design. What did you think? Did you see how those 5 design principles apply? Just in case, I'm just going to run through them really quickly. So first, you want to make sure that the style is applicable and it's not outdated. Next, you want to make sure there's not too much information. You got to make sure it's very concise and to the point of what the message should be. Number 3 is you really need to have high quality, professional looking images to back up your beautiful design. Number 4, make sure your color palette is applicable. And number 5, make sure that it has and follows those layout design principles. Thank you so much for watching this video. You can go and download the 6 fundamentals of graphic design in the description below, which is going to give you some more understanding of those. And I would love to hear how you're going to apply these tips to your own designs. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.